That's what creates the curiosity factor. That's what creates, okay, there is an ultimate dream that this character has in mind. There's like a finish line that we're trying to get to, something that they're trying to accomplish. And the question then becomes, will they get there?
Right.
Will they get the thing they want? And that curiosity creates desire to know the answer to that question.
Right.
And the flip side of that question is, will they not get what they want? Will their worst nightmare come true?
We're sisters, best friends, and authors on a mission to help you stoke your creative fire and live the life of your dreams. We believe that purpose fuels passion and that creativity is your secret weapon for mass construction. There's never been a better time to bless the world with your dream realized. You're listening to The Kate and Abbie Show.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Kate and Abbie Show. We're so glad you are here with us today. Today, we're talking about 7 easy ways to add suspense to any story. So if you want to add some suspense to your story and raise the stakes and make your readers all the more on the edge of their seat, flipping pages, staying up late into the night as they cannot wait to see what happens next in your story, this is the way to do it. It doesn't matter what genre you are writing, if you're writing contemporary or thriller or mystery or historical fiction, any genre works for the tips that we're going to share today. So it doesn't matter where you're coming from. If you're like, my story isn't suspenseful, you can add suspense to any story, and we're going to show you how. So we're going to dive into 7 tips today, easy, simple ways to add suspense to your story, and we are really excited to share these things. So before we get into this discussion, first we have to thank our sponsors, who are you guys. You are our amazing patrons. You keep this show alive and possible, free of interruptions. We so value your support. So if you get value out of this podcast, go to patreon.com/The Kate and Abbie Show and help us keep this alive and free of interruptions. And when you join the Patreon at any level, you get access to monthly live hangouts with me and Kate as we discuss our writing projects with you guys and share some of our thoughts and have Q&A and hear about your writing projects. It's a super fun way for us all to connect and hang out together every single month. So if you want to get in on that, definitely join the Patreon. Any tier has access to that live stream. So we will leave the link below this video for you to check out. But let's dive right into the 7 ways to add suspense to your story. Number 1 and most important, most vital way to add suspense is to build tension through character desires and fears. Now, this is something that Kate and I talk about a lot, is making sure that you're starting your story from a place where your characters are conflicted. They have something they're going after. They have a goal they are pursuing, and they have a conflicting fear that is holding them back. Okay, so if you can kick things off by digging into your characters' deepest desires and their darkest fears, that is automatically going to set the stage for high stakes in your story. Even if your story is a contemporary, even if it's a rom-com, even if it seems like there's not anything high stakes about what's going on, there's something at stake for your character, because they should have personal stakes in what's going on.
Even if it's just on an emotional level.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be like something big, like, heisting a giant amount of money or going on an epic fantasy battle adventure, to rescue someone. It can be literally an emotional struggle.
Yes.
It can be on an emotional or even mental level.
But they have to have like a purpose.
Yes.
They have to have a sense of like a goal. We have to go into the story seeing what this character is actively pursuing, because that's what creates the curiosity factor. That's what creates, okay, there is an ultimate dream that this character has in mind. There's like a finish line that we're trying to get to, something that they're trying to accomplish. And the question then becomes, will they get there?
Right.
Will they get the thing they want? And that curiosity creates desire to know the answer to that question.
Right.
And the flip side of that question is, will they not get what they want? Will their worst nightmare come true? So defining your character's desires and fears is a great place to start with creating that, laying that foundation for suspense, because that's really what sets the stakes. That's what makes us see, okay, this is what's at stake, this is what this character wants, and this is what will happen if they don't get what they want. So that alone can create so much tension in your story. Like you're saying, even if it's just an emotional struggle, even if it's something that seems like it is not that high stakes, it is just like something that's really important to the main character. That's what you're looking for.
Yes.
Number 2 way to add suspense is to add a ticking clock. This is my favorite way to add suspense, and I do this in pretty much every story I write. When I feel like something's missing, I'm like, there's some sort of sense of not enough momentum here. I try to add a ticking clock in any way that I possibly can. And this creates a sense of urgency. It creates a sense of, okay, there's a deadline. We can, like I was saying about seeing the finish line, we can see the finish line. We know exactly when it's going to show up because we have that ticking clock bringing us there. And you can create a ticking clock in various ways. It doesn't actually have to be like a time bomb running out. It can be something that is something that your character is either dreading or they're waiting to happen or waiting to finish. Maybe it is a period of like schooling that they're putting themselves through, or a challenge or a competition, or something that they're like leading up to this moment where something's going to happen. And it's either time is running out of something that is negative, like they don't want this thing to happen, or something positive that they're leading up to this positive, like climactic moment, and sort of preparing themselves for it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it can be really anything. Yeah. There's so many different ways that you can inject that into a story with just really simple things. Like, you know, regardless of what genre you're writing.
Yes.
Like so it's, you know, the simple little mechanism of like, you know, in Beauty and the Beast, like, oh, you have until all these petals fall off the rose to do this thing, to accomplish this thing. Otherwise the spells last forever. It's like, that's a very simple mechanism. And you can take that and you can make it look so many different ways. You can make it fit so many different genres, but yet it heightens the stakes because you're like, oh, okay, are they going to be able to not only accomplish this thing, but accomplish that thing before this person leaves them, before this bad thing happens, before their opportunity is missed, you name it. You can make it work.
Right. And this is something that I leveraged in my debut novel, 100 Days of Sunlight. And this was a story that it seems like you wouldn't have a ticking clock or any like huge impending sense of doom or anything, because it's a very cozy contemporary story. But I was able to leverage the ticking clock with my main character, Tessa, having going through temporary blindness. And we know that after 100 days, she's going to get her sight back. We know that through the description of the book. And during that time, she's friends with Weston, the other main character, who's an amputee, unbeknown to her. And so he's keeping this a secret from her the whole time throughout the story. And there's that ticking clock of, we know she's going to get her sight back at the end of the book and the secret will be out. How is all of that going to unfold? And I had so many readers tell me that one element alone like pulled them through the story and gave the story that sense of momentum, which I find so interesting, because all that really was a ticking clock. It was just, we know what's going to happen at this time, and how is that secret going to be revealed?
Yeah, what are the reactions going to be? And you haven't noticed, like, for some reason human beings are obsessed with seeing reactions to things. Look at all the videos on YouTube that it's like so-and-so reacting to this person reacting to this person reacting to, you know, seeing their child for the first time. You name it, there's reaction videos for it, and people love watching that. Yeah. So when you have something like that in your book, like, oh, this thing's going to be revealed, how are the characters going to react to that? Especially when you start to get to know them, you sort of know, you're like, oh, they're probably going to react this way. And now you have your readers are fully engaged in trying to predict what might happen.
Exactly. Yeah, so this certainly is not, the ticking clock isn't something that only can exist in like a heist book or a high stakes mystery or something. You can have it in any genre, regardless of your subject matter. Find a way to incorporate a deadline or a ticking clock in a way that makes every decision and every moment count. Number 3 way to add suspense is to introduce a rival character in your story. And this is kind of an interesting, I think a little bit more offbeat way to add suspense, because it just creates a sense of competition competition between your characters. And of course, it depends on what's going on in your story. Some stories will lend more to this than others. Like if you're writing an actual competition story or like a sports themed book or something where you actually have competitors who are, trying to accomplish the same goal. But you can also have a rival in almost any story. You can introduce a rival character who is going to basically be just as determined and competitive as the main character to get what they want. And maybe they have the same goal as the main character. And because they're both kind of going after this, it creates a sense of suspense and impending doom through their competition, because the question goes from being, will the main character win, to who will win, like out of these characters.
Yes.
Even if it's not like a prize that they're both trying to win, even if it's just like a sense of accomplishment or achieving their dream.
Right. Or even in like a romantic context of like, oh, who are they going to end up with?
Right.
That's, which some people hate that trope, but it also is a trope that works because it's sold millions of dollars. So in various ways. So there's a lot of different ways you can use it. And it just, what it really is when you think about what suspense is in all its different forms, is it's an open question that we don't have an answer to yet. And so it intrigues us. Our brain wants to be satisfied, like you've talked about before in your videos, with that dopamine hit of like wanting to follow the thread and know the answer. Wanting to follow the thread and know the answer. And so when you introduce something like that, it's amazing how much your reader will be pulled through the story, even by that alone, to know, like, I want to know what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like the whole curiosity reward thing, like you were saying about reaction videos. I think that's the curiosity that is being leveraged there, is you're wondering, there's a question posed of like, how is this, we know that this person's reacting to something that's surprising or shocking or heartwarming or whatever, and now there's that gap in our brain of we need to fill in the blank and know what that reaction was. So I think that like I've said in other videos, the curiosity and reward center of your brain lights up when you are engaging in story that triggers that makes you ask questions, and it's triggering dopamine in your brain. And so you're enjoying it. You're literally becoming addicted to it. You're addicted to finding out answers. And with curiosity, I like to kind of think of it as like a 2-to-1 ratio of curiosity and reward, of like, you're asking twice as many questions as you're getting answers, but you're still getting answers. So you're still being given some of what you're looking for. Your hunger's being fed a little bit, but not fully. So that way you keep coming back for more, and you keep turning pages and keep reading.
Exactly. Yes.
Number 4 way to add suspense to your story is to let there be serious consequences. This is something that I find missing from a lot of stories that feel like they're trying to be suspenseful, but really there are not serious consequences to the characters failing or the characters stumbling or making mistakes. It's like a bad thing might happen. They might mess something up during like a battle scene or a fight scene or during one of the challenges that they're trying to overcome. And then there really isn't a consequence to it.
Right.
Or there isn't really a consequence to them failing their
Abbie and I
mission.
like to call this fake tension.
Yes, it's like
because
fake
it's
tension.
like building up tension of like, oh, this could be really bad. This could be really bad if this happens. And then it happens, but there really isn't any real consequence to it. Or it's just glossed over and then we move on quickly. And what that does is it makes your reader kind of desensitized to the suspense you're building.
Yes, exactly.
Like, oh yeah, this is going to be just another, it's something that, but it's not really a big deal. And then we move on.
Yes.
So you don't want to abuse your reader's trust by crafting suspense only to have it be no consequence, because that's really what suspense is like, okay, is there going to be a big consequence to this thing?
Right.
If after a while, if you have it be no consequence ever, or really nothing, it's just very mild, it's not really a big deal, then we stop feeling suspenseful. about it. You know what I mean? It's
yes.
like, you know, when we see Captain America get pushed off a high building, we're not really in suspense. We're like, oh no, he's actually going to die. Because we've seen this happen so many times where nothing, you know, he just sort of gets up and brushes himself off. So it's like, you have to kind of judge like, okay, how am I sprinkling this in and what are the consequences for each action?
Right. Yes. And if it's the ultimate goal that the protagonist is going after that doesn't have a serious consequence attached to it, we're not going to really feel sold out and committed to that goal with them. And we're not going to understand why they're pursuing it. So for every reason why they want to pursue this goal, there should be a contradicting consequence to not reaching that goal, even if it's like, so if it's like the ultimate mission that they're on throughout the book to achieve what they want, if they don't, it's not just going to be kind of disappointing to them. It's going to be their worst nightmare. So how is it going to be their worst nightmare? How is it going to upend their life? How is it going to change their life forever? And keeping that consequence sort of always like breathing down the back of their neck is a good way to add suspense, because it reminds us constantly why they're driven to do this and what the consequence is if they fail. So it gives us that sense of like impending doom, but also cheering them on because we really don't want to see them fail. We really don't want to see them have to face this consequence.
Yes, exactly.
And that leads us to number 5, which is to use obstacles and setbacks. So when you throw obstacles and setbacks into your story, you can really up the stakes by challenging your character to encounter their misbelief in different ways, basically, is what this is. So each time cause and effect leads them to a new obstacle, a new fork in the road, a new issue that they have to overcome, a new challenge they have to overcome, we should be seeing their internal decision-making process and how that's coming from their fatal flaw, basically. Like how are they forced to grapple with what they want and what they're afraid of at each fork in the road where they're making those decisions.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that, you know, when you're setting up these obstacles and setbacks, it's not just throwing punches at them. It's not just the punches of the plot pushing them around. It should have personal significance based on what they're trying to accomplish here. So cause and effect, kind of, it's like setting up dominoes and each one topples over the next, and it escalates the story's momentum and that sense of suspense.
I think that's why it's so important to be clear on what the character is trying to achieve, where they're trying to go, because we can't really set this up, like you're saying. We can't set up those dominoes until we know, like, okay, well, what are they trying to get to? Where are they trying to, what are they trying to reach? Where are they trying to go from here? And then we can start putting those obstacles and challenges in their path. Once we figure out where, like, where is point A, where is point B?
Yeah. And here what you're leveraging kind of is expectation versus reality, which is a great way to create that curiosity and reward. It kind of reminds me of the meme that I've shared before in live trainings and in my videos. That's you've probably seen. It's like the plan versus reality, like how your plan looks in your mind and then how it actually is. And one is like a stick figure drawing of like a very easy road to the finish line, and the other one is like mountainous terrain and ravines and rivers and waterfalls and like all this stuff that you have to get to your goal. And it's funny because it's relatable, and that's how life feels a lot of times. We make a plan, we're like, okay, that's going to be easy to accomplish, I see all my action steps, but then once you actually start going through that,
it's a lot more complicated.
And you encounter unexpected things come up in the road and make it more difficult, new challenges. So I would encourage you to make that comparison for your protagonist if you're kind of trying to set up obstacles in their path and figure out, okay, how is their plan going to differ from reality? Write out what their plan is, and then write out what the reality is going to be. What are they actually going to encounter that's going to be unexpected, and force them to overcome new challenges and force them to confront their misbelief in new ways, because ultimately this is a journey of change. This isn't just a journey of your character doing a bunch of random stuff that brings them to, you know, a place where they live to tell the tale.
Right.
Like,
it's like, how are they transforming?
Right.
How is the journey transforming them as a character?
Yeah, exactly. So when you're creating those obstacles and setbacks, you can kind of ask yourself, like, okay, when they get to the other side of this challenge, how are they going to be a little bit different than they were before? Like, does it make them a better person? Do they grow through this? Do their relationships become closer because of this?
Yeah.
Or stronger?
Exactly.
Number 6 is to balance risk and reward. Now, this is kind of like the consequence thing, having there be a serious consequence. When there's no obvious risk and no irresistible reward for this protagonist's journey, it can be really difficult for us to be like invested in it. Excited about it, and to see like their reasoning behind it. So I've definitely read stories and watched films before where the characters are going after something, they have a goal, but there's no real sense of motive behind it, and there's no balance of the risk and the reward. And this is something that we do all the time in our minds, even like subconsciously, as we think about, you know, a thing that we want to pursue or do or whatever. And the risks of it crop up in your mind, and the rewards also crop up, and you have to kind of weigh those scales and decide, like, do the rewards outweigh the risks? Right. And even if they don't seem to, like the pain versus pain thing, even if it seems more painful to do this thing, you have to like frame it up in your mind of thinking the reward is going to be really great. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to see the characters, the protagonist or the main character in your story, we have to see them like going through this rationalization process in order for their goal to make sense, especially with like a really risky goal.
Yeah, exactly. We have to know, like, why is this important to them? Why are they setting out on this journey in this way? Like, why is it important to them? Why are they prioritizing that? And really seeing how they prioritize other things will help us understand, like, why this matters to them, going into their, you know, their conflict about why this is important.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was saying, even if it was, even if the risks outweigh the reward, your character can kind of talk themselves into it still, if they really want it badly enough.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I feel like that's something that people do all the time, is they kind of, or actually when you see anybody doing anything that's like really risky, like extreme sports or whatever, and you could definitely quite easily get killed doing it. You're like, why would that person do that? To them, the reward outweighs the risk.
Right, even if it's a reward that they've created in their own mind.
Exactly.
Because it's not necessarily a reward that everyone would feel the same way. Right. So it's not like, oh, if you run this race and cross the finish line at a certain time, you'll win $10 million. That's something that most people would experience the same way. Right. Because it's very tangible. But for other things, it's like more of a mental landscape that someone creates, that they're like, if I can achieve this, I will feel this way about myself or my life. And that becomes very, very abstract. And when you start to get into those realms, that's when people can't understand, like, why would you feel that? I can't even relate to that. Like, why would you risk those things to get that? Because it seems so intangible. Like Abby was saying, something dangerous, someone who wants to like climb Mount Everest to feel a certain way, because you're not actually getting any tangible reward for doing that. So those can be really interesting things to explore in your characters, because that's really creating, like, who are they inside? What is their mental landscape like? How do they feel about these different things, and what is really driving them? Are they more emotionally driven? Are they more rationally driven? And then you're digging into their personalities as well.
Right. Yes. And reminding the reader of that risk and reward that's always balancing out on the scales in their mind will help us to see their like reasoning process, their decision-making process, and why they're going after this goal. And it will build suspense because of that, because we always know the risk. And the risk is always kind of looming in the back of their mind.
Right.
And last but not least, number 7 is to leverage a buried secret. Everybody loves buried secrets in the stories. They really bring a lot of zest and a lot of intrigue and suspense, because especially if the main character or one of the point of view characters has a secret that they're keeping from other characters, and they would give anything to keep this secret buried forever and they do not want it to come out, that is something that is going to create a lot of suspense in your story, because we know inevitably this secret is going to come out at some point.
Right.
And so it's kind of like that ticking clock leading up to when is it going to be revealed. And it can be something very simple too. It doesn't have to be a huge secret like, I'm secretly the villain or something like that. It can be very personal, emotional, something that doesn't seem super high stakes, but it's high stakes for the character who's keeping the secret. It means something to them that it stays a secret, and they don't want other characters, or maybe just one specific character, to find out about this. But of course, that character is going to find out eventually.
Right.
And so there's that ticking clock leading up to when is the secret going to be revealed, and that's what keeps us hungry to see that moment.
Like a simple example I can think of is like Jane Eyre with Mr. Rochester not revealing that he's married to someone who has a mental illness, and he is taking care of her, but she doesn't know that he's already married. And then of course towards, I don't know what part of the book, because I'm always thinking of it
midpoint kind of.
It's like then it's revealed and it's like this huge disaster, but it's not like, it doesn't really affect that many people. It's only really a disaster for 2 people.
Right.
So that's why it doesn't have to be something that's like, oh, this is going to destroy everything. It's like, no, it might only destroy the happiness of 1 or 2 people.
Right.
Or it could be something that's like, this is a really sensitive, difficult thing for me to talk about.
Right.
It could be like a past trauma, which actually that's a good example of kind of, because it was a traumatic experience.
Right.
So pulling on things like that can be really just emotional to that one person, that one character.
Yes. Yeah, and that creates a great sense of suspense in your story, because this is something that you can add to any story regardless of genre. I mean, it could be high stakes, thriller, fantasy, rom-com, doesn't matter what genre you're writing. You can find a character or multiple characters in your story who can keep something hidden. And this thing that they keep hidden is something they would feel very vulnerable or even like in danger if they shared it. And that will of course be different for every character, but any character that you can find that you can give them a secret that they don't want anyone to find out about, that is going to help so much to create just higher stakes for them personally, to in relationships and throughout the story in general. Is going to help so much.
Yes, it is.
So just to recap, these 7 easy ways to add suspense to your story. Number 1, build tension through character desires and fears. 2, add a ticking clock. 3, introduce a rival. 4, let there be serious consequences. 5, use obstacles and setbacks. 6, balance risk and reward. And 7, leverage a buried secret. Hopefully you guys took some notes. Comment below and tell us which of these ways to add suspense is your favorite. What have you personally seen done really well in some of your favorite books or movies or TV shows? We would love to discuss all of this with you guys, so hop into the comments and join the discussion. We want to hear from you guys. And hopefully you enjoyed this discussion and got some ideas from it, got some good brainstorming, good creative juices flowing for ways to add suspense to your story regardless of what genre you're writing. It's definitely something that is worth thinking about and diving into, because adding suspense really is what creates that addictive quality and makes your reader want to stay up past their bedtime reading.
100%. So true.
So thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, and we hope to see you guys in the next episode. Until then,
stay stoked
and rock on.